Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have two guests. I have Gwen Jones, co-owner of Ariel Design and Boeing and Company, and Karla Pearlstein, also co-owner of Ariel Design. Thank you for joining me.
It's our pleasure.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about your background. I'll let you decide who's going to go first.
This is Gwen speaking, and I've been making floor cloths since about 2004. And in 2016, I also got involved in the business of antique wallpaper, joining Bo Sullivan at Bowling & Co., which has an amazing archive of original wallpapers dating from about 1880 to 1930. And prior to these creative endeavors, I worked in telecommunications, primarily for Sprint, and then at a series of internet startups. I was attracted to floor cloths, which I had never encountered prior to about 2002, as I saw them as this fabulous marriage of beauty, craft, and function. They're a very practical alternative to area rugs and are infinitely customizable in terms of style, pattern, and palette. For the uninitiated, floor cloths are canvas-based rugs with painted designs. I was just completely charmed by them. And when I got laid off from my last technology job, I was delighted to focus on creating a tangible product that gives people joy. And I have to say, in my experience, floor cloths really do that.
And I was attracted. This is Karla speaking, and I was attracted to floor cloths. I first came across the concept of floor cloths on the back east, and they were something that I saw in house museums like the Historic New England and whatnot. And then I made acquaintance with Gwen and realized that she was making these beautiful floor cloths here. And it wasn't constricted to just kind of the colonial patterns. So a lot of times when people think of floor cloths, they kind of think of those colonial patterns. But the one nice thing about what we're doing in terms of Ariel Grace is that the canvas is truly a design option that anybody can come up with a design for. It doesn't have to be boxed in by the colonial designs. And so when we make floor cloths for people, it can be anything from mid-century modern to something they come up with to wallpaper design. I mean, it can be anything along the spectrum. And we're starting to experiment with printing designs on the canvas. Right. So that's another really exciting segue to open up a whole new arena of designs.
Right. Not limited by, or do you stencil? Is that
most of them are stenciled?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be limited by a stencil.
Yeah, you wouldn't be limited by a stencil, but you can also freehand design too. I mean, it's a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want.
So why preservation? What drew you into kind of preserving this as an art form, pretty much?
So what I would say is that in sort of three ways, floor cloths are about preservation. They predated linoleum as a popular form of floor covering and were produced in the UK and Scotland in the 17 and 1800s in large manufacturing plants. And they were imported to the US, but significant manufacturing was never really established here. And the reason for that was linoleum was patented in 1864, which was roughly the time that manufacturing was being set up here. And linoleum was cheaper to produce and incredibly durable, and it just kind of killed the nascent floor cloth industry here. But artisans have been making floor cloths for the past several decades, and then sort of recently, I would say in the past 10 years or so, there are a number of companies both in the US and around the world that are printing kind of the traditional floor cloth designs that Karla was referencing on vinyl. And in some cases, they're calling those floor cloths. But I think they cozy up to the concept of preservation in that they're an old product that is being made again.
Right.
So that's one way. And in another way, a well-made floor cloth is incredibly durable and will last for many decades. And so they're much more environmentally friendly than a lot of what people might use as an alternative in a kitchen rug that ends up getting replaced every couple of years. They'll way outlast these vinyl alternatives. And so to the extent that preservation is a form of environmentalism, they check that box. And then I would say that, in my view, one of the aspects of preservation is that it's a celebration of old things. And this sort of harkens to what Karla was saying about the patterns. A lot of the patterns that are used for floor cloths are these old traditional designs. And there was this 1739 book, I think, from John Carwitham, which is called Various Kinds of Floor Decorations. And that is sort of a Bible of floor cloth designs that a lot of floor cloth makers use. And those designs tend to be very geometric and have sort of a look of inlaid marble.
Right.
And so those patterns are very commonly reproduced as floor cloths. And what we've done are a number of pieces that are based on linoleum patterns, where a client finds a linoleum pattern, say, under their existing flooring or preserved in the closet or under a piece of furniture or something, and they want to restore that room back to its original furnishings. And so we can take that linoleum pattern, create stencils to reproduce it, reproduce the colorway, and end up essentially providing them the linoleum that they're looking for in this floor cloth form, which can be wall to wall or it can be as an area rug. And at this point, if you want to find somebody who's going to actually do that with linoleum, there are very few people that are doing it, and it's incredibly expensive. So floor cloths are a great way to get the look of linoleum at a reasonable price. And so in that sense,
It's preserving the appearance.
It's preserving the appearance, right?
When you were talking about the environmental aspect, I was thinking too, you don't have the issues with the VOCs and off-gassing that you have with some of the other products.
Right, absolutely true.
So, did you have why preservation? What drew you into preservation?
Well, this is Karla again, and I have been involved in preservation for a very long time in many different iterations of preservation. I've done historic preservation consulting. I've done work for homeowners. I've done work for museums. And so, I've been involved in lots of different arenas with historic preservation. And I, again, really love the concept of the floor cloths, and I'm bringing those into some of my preservation projects.
Right.
So I used floor cloths extensively here at the firehouse, where I did, a big preservation or restoration project here. And then other clients I have recommended floor cloths, and they have used them and love them.
Right. So tell me about Ariel Grace Designs, the history, what kind of products. I'm assuming it's floor cloths, but what other? I think that there's other things that you do offer besides just the floor cloths, same material and things. But was there like placemats and runners and things like that?
Actually, we're really not doing that. We are concentrating really on the floor cloths. But in terms of the genesis of this company, I had a former floor cloth company from 2004 to 2016, and in 2016 I sort of took a break from that and started working with Bo Sullivan at Bowling and Company, and I had known Karla since 2008 or so, and she was the founder of the Preservation Artisan Guild, which my former floor cloth company had been a member of, and Bowling and Company was a member of. And in 2018, Karla was working on, she'd been working on this actually for years by then, but she was getting to the point of how she wanted to furnish the firehouse, and asked me to help her find somebody to make the floor cloths that she was looking for, because she felt that floor cloths were the right predominant floor covering for the firehouse. And so we sort of looked around to see if we could find a resource, and given what she was looking to do and the scale she wanted for the pieces and so forth, we just weren't really finding a resource. And she said to me, well, I have a space, could you make them for me? And I thought, wow, that would be wonderful for me to be able to get back into doing some floor cloth making, which as much as I love the wallpaper business, and it really is marvelous in terms of kind of surrounding yourself with beauty, it doesn't have the same creative opportunities that floor cloth making does. So I thought, well, I'll dip back into that for a while and work with Karla to come up with what we're going to do for the firehouse. And in my former life as a floor cloth maker, one of the things that I'd always wanted to do but never actually was able to realize was to take the patterns of Christopher Dresser, and particularly his book Studies in Design, which was published in 1875. And this book is just a wealth of fantastic patterns. And I had always thought some of them were very adaptable to floor cloths.
Right.
And so when I was walking through the firehouse with Karla and we were looking at the spaces that we want to put floor cloths in, there was one particular one, which is actually this one right here. And I thought, oh my God, that is, just a perfect place to use this particular design. And I showed Karla the book, and we went through it, and she said, oh, I love these designs too. And in fact, I think all of the floor cloths for the firehouse should be made using these Christopher Dresser designs as a means of sort of tying together the look. And so we did that, and I think ultimately we produced 11 pieces for the firehouse, 9 of which are based on Christopher Dresser patterns, and 2 of which are based on wallpaper patterns from the same era from Bowling and Company's archive. So in the course of this marvelous collaboration, we decided, why don't we make develop a company so that we can share these fabulous patterns with the hopefully adoring public. And so we did that, and we formed the company in 2019 and launched our website in late 2020. And at this point have a portfolio of, I don't know, maybe 40-ish designs, which are fairly heavily Christopher Dresser based. A number of again reproduced linoleum patterns,
some marbleized ones.
Some marbleized patterns, and a number of patterns that are based on wallpaper. And then we've also, to the extent, if a client comes to us and they have an idea about what they want, there is a huge number of stencil companies out in the world, and we will certainly go to them, and if there's something that we think is going to work, we'll use a pre-made stencil.
Did you have anything to add about the history or your products?
We have done, like Gwen was saying, about kind of the reproduction of linoleum, historic linoleum. We did a project for a historic house in California, where they found a piece of the old linoleum that had this little checkered pattern, and we were able to reproduce that and then create it in such a way that it could be wall to wall, and then we shipped that to them. So again, it's all very custom.
What we do. When you were saying wall to wall, it made me think, do you put something on it so that it stays down, or is there
with the molding, the half round molding?
Well, I was just even thinking like on the bottom of the floor cloth. Okay. Oh, so you actually keep it down. Okay.
Yeah,
there are a number of them.
Yeah. Okay. So then you don't have to worry. I guess I was imagining, like, even if it's wall to wall, that's a little bit different than like having like an area rug style.
Right.
Yeah. that maybe the edges would curl, or so. Yeah, it makes sense that you could have a way to tack it down.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there's one room that's done that way here at the firehouse.
Okay.
So it's,
So you talked a little bit about it, but tell me a little bit about the history of floor cloths, or what floor cloths are, specifically.
So basically, the concept is that they're a fabric base with a painted pattern, and that notion of using that style of thing as a floor covering came about in the Renaissance period in Europe. So they've been around for about 500 years, and I would say the most common substrates back in the day were probably burlap, and today the most common substrate is canvas, or now I think there are a lot of people that are doing, again, this printed vinyl thing. And that is sort of not really a floor cloth in the sense
Right.
that it isn't the fabric and it's not the painted design.
Yeah, it's not a cloth.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But the commonality a lot of times is the patterns. But I think that there are many different ways that people have made floor cloths, particularly since manufacturing never really got set up here.
Right.
It's how artisans have chosen to make them. And I've been experimenting, again, since 2004 with various different canvas weights. And at this point, I'm exclusively using the canvas that you see up that is used for all of these, which is a number 4 cotton duck, which is a extremely heavyweight industrial grade canvas. And we prime the backside of that and then put 2 coats of gesso on the top side and then 4 coats of Benjamin Moore paint and standing between coats. And then the design is generally stenciled on that,
Right.
although as Karla alluded to, we're also printing. But when we do printing, it is again on this exact same method of construction. So it's printed on the painted material. In the case of stencils, a lot of times we are having the stencils made, and the most complicated part of the whole process is figuring out the stencil layout,
Right.
figuring out the motif sizes and all of that. But once the design has been applied, we apply 5 coats of sprayed polyurethane on top of the design, and then cut it to its hemmed size, flip it over, hem it, and we use do a 2-inch hem that is glued, which I much prefer to a sewn hem. Okay. Because as you can see, you don't really even notice anything. Right. There. You can't see a hem, whereas with a sewn hem, you can see stitching. There's a potential for that to at some point unravel, whereas this is really very secure. And then the thing we do on our area style pieces that aren't wall to wall is apply a layer of carpet padding that goes from the hemline to the hemline, and then we cover that with a vinyl fabric, which creates a floor covering that's very easy to keep clean. So right. Pet hair and dander and all of that stuff that would get absorbed in the backside of a regular floor cloth or in a rug doesn't get attracted, it actually gets rejected.
Right.
And also, as you can perhaps feel yourself, there's a little bit of cushion. And so these are incredibly durable floor coverings that will last for decades if properly cared for. And one of the things that we do is apply a coat of wax as the final finish coat.
On top of the poly.
Yeah, and then maintenance is re-waxing in a busy space, maybe every 6 months, and in a less busy space, maybe every 2 or 3 years. But as long as that kind of maintenance is followed, they really will stay looking beautiful for decades.
Well, and the wax makes sense to knock down any shininess too. So it really gives you it allows the colors to pop, but not have like a shiny kind of glossy look.
Yeah.
Well, and then for people that have allergies or any issues of that type, the floor cloths are so much better than carpets because they, again, don't hold pet hair. They're easily cleanable. Yeah. If water gets spilled on them, it's easily cleaned. So floor cloths are a much more hygienic alternative than carpets.
Right. Yeah, and easy cleanup's a huge thing with pets.
Oh, yes.
And with people.
Oh, that's true. So what is the process to order a floor cloth from you?
So we have a small inventory on our website, and for those pieces, somebody can just call us or email us and pay via check or electronically, and we'll ship out within a day. But most of the work that we do is custom,
Okay.
and so that typically involves a fair amount of back and forth, and I would say most of that is done by email, but it can be phone. It's whatever the client prefers. Mm-hmm. And what we're interested in understanding are what patterns appeal to them. So I ask them to look through our website, and maybe there's a pattern that they really like, but even if there isn't the perfect pattern for them, it's good to understand what does appeal to them, right, so that if I'm going to do a wider stencil search, I can have an idea of what they like. They like. Right. So the other thing we need to know is what they have in mind for palette, or they can just, if they don't really have a sense of that, the other thing we need regardless is pictures of the room the piece is going to be in, and then some idea of what they want the size to be. And if they don't really have an idea about that, again, pictures can help us help them determine what that should be. Yeah. Often what I will do is create a graphic image of what the floor cloth might look like in the size that they're looking at. And then the thing I strongly encourage people to do is have us create a sample. And a sample is produced with the design and the colors we've talked about on prepared canvas. Right. And it generally might be 20 inches by 20 inches, but it really depends on what the size of the elements of the pattern are. And then we send that to them, and they can look at that in the room it's going to be in, and make sure that the palette's right, and the motif size, it seems really good. And then once they've approved the sample, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for us to produce the piece, and we do look for a 50% deposit at the time that they have given us approval, and 50% when we ship.
And then do you ship via like UPS or FedEx or something like that? And,
yes. And
then so you can ship. You're not geographically limited. You can ship.
No. We ship actually all over the U.S. and internationally. And what we use is 2 concrete forming tubes. So we wrap the floor cloth around a concrete forming tube and then put it in a larger concrete forming tube. So it's an incredibly secure method of shipment. Right. And I think I probably shipped 1,000 of these, and I've had 1 damage claim. I'll never use that carrier again.
Well, I think creating samples is so important, because especially if you're doing something where you're not seeing the person, and that really helps to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, and I know that Gwen had mentioned earlier that she had met Karla through the Preservation Artisan Guild. So can you tell me a little bit about that organization?
So the Preservation Artisans Guild is a community of craftspeople and artisans, and we comprise basically the building arts, but also different kinds of crafts. We have people who restore paintings. We have people that restore light fixtures. We have contractors. We have building designers. And so it covers a wide spectrum of crafts. And so it's an opportunity for craftspeople to be able to connect with one another and learn from one another.
Right.
But it's also an opportunity for the public, if they're looking for a particular type of, craft or whatever, have like a one-stop shop. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is saying, I have a stained glass window that I need to be restored, they can come to the Preservation Artisans Guild, look through our membership directory, and find someone who might be able to help them.
Right. Yeah.
So it's it's both for the members in terms of their ability to network with one another. Yes. And if there's a project that somebody is working on and they need a really skilled mason, right, they can look within the guild and say, I have a resource for that one. So it's something where members can resource one another, but also the public has a resource.
And I did notice looking at the website that you have people not just from the Portland area, you have people
It's basically nationwide. We have members on the East Coast, we have members, all the way in Astoria. So it's definitely a national membership. It started out just being something that was local, but what we discovered was that, in order to broaden our spectrum, we needed to move beyond the local area.
Right.
We have a silversmith in Rhode Island who is just an absolute master. But we don't have that here. So the one silversmith that was here that was really, really good retired.
Right.
So now we have the silversmith in Rhode Island, and silver can be shipped. It's just very easy to be shipped. We have a lighting specialist in Massachusetts, and she is extraordinary at being able to look at a space and think about what's in her inventory and make suggestions accordingly. A lot of the light fixtures here at the firehouse were through her.
Okay, they're beautiful. And this, now I'm just looking at it. Was this?
This was a billiard light.
Okay.
At one time. And but this came out of her, her inventory. And then after the firehouse was finished, I realized that I really needed a light fixture on that side over there. And so I called her, talked to her about it. She suggested that light fixture. It was absolutely perfect. And so, we try to pull in people that are, at the top of their game.
Right.
But we also look at how, how the Preservation Artisan Guild can keep some of these crafts alive.
Right. Because
again, a lot of these people, they're doing crafts that it's hard to find.
Right. It is. And I hear a lot, and I know it's not true because, I work within the industry, but I hear a lot of times people will say, oh, I didn't know that there was somebody who did that. Right, and so it's great to find people that, or have a resource for people to find and make those connections.
Exactly. Yeah. And our organization was based on another organization that came across it's in the, in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Called Artistic License. And so I saw Artistic License and saw what they did, and it's like, oh my gosh, we need that.
Right.
And so that they inspired the formation of the Preservation Artisans Guild.
I think it's a very necessary resource, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and we do educational activities. We haven't been able to do that with the virus and all that, but we will hold studio tours. We have lectures.
People love field trips.
Exactly, and people love to see how things are done.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, one of the things that we've been talking about is at some point having a studio tour for Ariel Grace, so that people can come in and see how a floor cloth is made, and talk to us about that process.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think that seeing people make things and how the process really helps connect people to maybe why it's expensive, or because they don't understand all the steps and everything that needs to go into it.
Right. It's an investment, but it is also an investment that's going to last.
Right.
It's not a throwaway product.
Right.
But we have historians in our guild who educate about the history of things. Like John Gutenberger is a historian in Astoria. We did kind of a video program because we couldn't have a live program.
Right.
So we're kind of branching out into that as well, so that we can reach more people.
I've seen a lot of, and talking to people in the podcast, I've seen a lot of organizations that have really pivoted well onto virtual.
Right.
I've done 2 virtual presentations and decided I didn't like it because it was like talking to myself for half an hour. Like I couldn't see anybody.
But it also does fireplace, glass fireplace.
Yes.
So we're setting up a virtual tour with him.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
We'll we'll show you one of his fireplace fronts in a
Oh,
moment.
yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a glass fireplace front, so I'm excited to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so well, tell me a little bit about where, from your points of view, preservation challenges and trends.
well, it's when you're looking at architectural preservation, it's very challenging right now because there are a lot of politicians that have kind of taken the stance that preservation gets in the way of more units, more, and so they
Progress. In the way of progress.
they are basically stripping a lot of the protection for historic, buildings and historic neighborhoods. They're stripping that in the name of, more units. There's the residential infill project that is happening here in Portland, where every corner lot in the city of Portland is now under development pressure, because with that new ordinance, it allows for corner lots to be, the buildings to be torn down and to put like 4 or 5, units in there. It degrades the neighborhoods.
Right.
It's been shown statistically that really doesn't make a lot of difference in terms of providing more units.
Mm.
And then the units that are being developed aren't exactly affordable.
Right.
And so,
and that's a huge. I think that's a huge
So,
issue across the country. Is the
yes.
affordable housing.
so I'm driving down Interstate Avenue and I see a 1940s apartment complex
Yes.
that was affordable housing. That people with service industry jobs could
Right.
afford.
Yeah.
It's all fenced off. It's going to be torn down, and then they're going to be building a big apartment complex in there.
Right.
But those units aren't going to be affordable
Right.
for the people that got kicked out of there.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very frustrating.
Yeah. There's huge challenges in affordable housing, and we did a podcast a couple weeks ago with someone from Place Economics, and we talked about affordable housing, and they've done studies that show the older building stock is where the affordable housing is.
Exactly.
So if you retain that, then you retain affordable housing in a community.
Exactly. But it's really hard to get that message to resonate with some of the politicians that are currently in office. It's very difficult. And, I don't understand why they can't hear the message, but they just can't.
And I know in Pennsylvania, there's some state programs that actually subsidize then some affordable housing. So if there's a lot of development, then a certain percentage of the apartments are then allotted for affordable housing.
Right.
But without that, and there's a lot of competition for that funding.
Right.
So then the developers are trying to get it, but if you don't get it, then do you stop the project, or do you go on and just not make it affordable? There's a whole tension.
Whole overlay.
Yeah.
But the Northwest district here. I mean, it's got a historic district. There are lots of historic buildings here, and it's one of the densest neighborhoods in Portland. So it's like, excuse you, but you can mix density and historic buildings.
You can.
And you can allow for sensitively created ADUs. Mm-hmm. There's lots of ways to preserve your historic buildings, but also provide affordable housing.
I agree, and creative solutions.
But it's just you just can't do a one size fits all.
Did you have any trends, or?
I think she said it.
Okay, very good. Was there anything before we wrap up? Was there anything that you thought of when we were talking that maybe you wanted to share that I didn't ask you?
No.
Yeah, not that I can think of. I think you covered kind of a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay. So, did you have anything that you would like to promote to our listeners?
So what I would say there is that we would be happy to offer your listeners 15% off anything that's in our inventory. I don't ever offer blanket discounts on custom work because we just don't know what people are gonna. We don't know how much the work is. So
No, I agree with you. When I put that question out, I usually say like, even if you're doing a seminar or you have a book, like anything you want, it's anything you want to promote. It doesn't, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't have to necessarily be a discount, but I appreciate that, and I'm sure that the listeners do too. So how can our listeners contact you?
So our phone number is 503-206-2631. Our website is arielgracedesign.com. And our email is info@arielgracedesign.com.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.